Welcome to Parenting Unscripted. I am your host, Katie Collette, and today we are talking about one of the most important things in the world, sleep. I love sleep so much, so this is a topic near and dear to my heart, especially as a parent. And parents, of course, know sleep is not always easy to come by. So we have a wonderful guest to talk with us about best sleep practices for our families. And that is Chrissy Lawler. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified pediatric sleep consultant, a whole dream in one human. She's also the author of the book, The Peaceful Sleeper. Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Oh, I've been following all of your pages, and I told Chrissy before the show started, I wish I had her 12 years ago when my son was born, because everything I've seen on your Instagram page, I'm like, yes, check. I needed that. That's great knowledge. So we're going to talk more about all of your social media in just a moment. But first, I want to know, why did you decide with your career that you wanted to focus on sleep?
Yeah. So, I've been a therapist for 15 years. And even before I had kids, I started noticing in my clinical practice that my clients that were the most stuck, that, we weren't seeing the progress that we wanted to, the common thread was sleep issues. And so I realized very quickly that the best way to optimize people's health and well-being is to improve sleep.
That makes so much sense. You just feel so much better once you've had good rest or good sleep. Why is there so much debate, though, when we'll focus on babies, of course, why is there so much debate about sleep training?
Yeah, that one's a heavy topic because there is a lot of misinformation out there. But first and foremost, parents love their children so much. We are so invested in their optimal outcomes and their optimal well-being. And so when we have really loud noises in the space of what is best practice, what's going to benefit our children, what is going to harm our children, we of course get very invested in that.
Yeah.
And voices can get really amped. And unfortunately, research can get deeply misconstrued.
Yeah, I think we've learned that in a lot of elements of life. But yeah, there's been so much that I've seen with sleep training. A friend of mine did it with her child so successfully. So we've seen it work so well. How would you say that sleep training is different than some of the traditional methods like cry it out?
Yeah, so there's much more science and methodology behind it. When sleep training as a concept was first introduced, it was much more hands off than it is now. It was a little bit of close the door at 7 p.m., come back at 7 a.m., and whatever happens, happens. And eventually they'll learn to sleep through the night, which does work in theory, but that's way more intense than it needs to be. And so sleep training in the modern age is very attuned. It's very intentional. We are scaffolding skills in the way that we achieve every other developmental milestone. We first establish a strong foundation with support, and then we slowly, gradually release that support so that our children can achieve independence and mastery.
When for new parents who may honestly have never heard of this thing called sleep training, so much is new when you're a brand new parent. Can you explain some of the tips to make sleep training successful?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we have to start from a solid sleep foundation. That means in those first 4 months of your baby's life, when their brain is brand new, their sleep architecture has not yet developed yet. Their brain is not yet developed yet. We are doing everything that we can as a parent to set them up for success.
Right.
So in our method, we have our 4 pillars of a solid newborn sleep foundation. That's optimizing feeding to get every calorie that our children can reasonably take in every meal. The more they eat during the day, the less that they will need to eat overnight. We're optimizing timing to prevent overtiredness, but we're also teaching the brain how to develop that sleep architecture, these sleep-wake cycles, and preventing overtiredness, because overtiredness is what actually leads to this wired and tired cortisol spike phenomenon. Then we are learning basic soothing strategies, how we keep our infants calm and content and well regulated and happy and easily drift off into sleep. And we're treating and eliminating sources of discomfort. We spend the first 4 months learning everything that we can about how to optimally meet our baby's sleep needs and doing everything that we need to do to give them a solid foundation. After 4 months, when their sleep architecture is more developed, that's when we scale back and we kind of see what can you do on your own. I compare it a little bit to swim lessons. We blow bubbles, we kick, we learn the structure, we learn how to float. And at some point, we let go and we coach from the sidelines so that they can independently do what we've been teaching them all along.
Absolutely. I really want to hone in on one thing that you mentioned in there, though. I was always taught with my son that sleep begets sleep. And there are some out there who are like, no, you want to tire that child out. But you're saying, no, sleep begets sleep is right.
Sleep begets sleep 100%. The interesting thing, though, is that for adult sleep issues, we do need to increase that sleep pressure so that we can take the sleep when it is offered to us. And that's just adult brains are very, very different than baby brains. And I think as adults, we kind of project what would work for me onto what might work for our baby. And sometimes with babies and toddlers, exhausting them does seem to make them crash, but we actually want good, healthy sleep habits, not just go, 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 and then crash from exhaustion.
And it really does. Like you can tell when they're overtired, everyone is miserable. They are so cranky and it makes us as parents cranky. You really need to almost take a family nap if you can.
100%. I call that wired and tired. Like you're so tired and then cognitive functioning stops being optimal. I don't know about you, but my kids always get really clumsy and accident prone as bedtime is nearing. And it's like, yeah, your balance and coordination have gone out the window. We have more meltdowns. Nobody is functioning optimally when we're exhausted.
Yeah, that's very true. On the other side of this break, we are going to talk a bit more about cry it out versus, no sleep at all and what a middle ground might look like there. So we're going to be right back talking with Chrissy Lawler about so much more when it comes to the importance of sleep and sleep training. We will be right back.
Whether you're already working in education or aspiring to, then say yes to NPS. Norfolk Public Schools are currently hiring in the following positions. NPS offers the highest salaries and sign-on bonuses in Hampton Roads, plus a work lifestyle you'll love. Say yes to NPS.
Welcome back to Parenting Unscripted, where we're continuing our conversation about helping our children get better sleep. And honestly, that just makes us better people. So to continue the conversation, we're once again joined by Chrissy Lawler, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. So Chrissy, let's talk a bit about cry it out and no sleep at all. Some people are stuck between those two things. Is there a middle ground that's helpful for families?
Yes, absolutely. I always remind parents that our babies are individuals. There is not one size fits all approach for anything in life. We all exercise differently. We have different ways of optimizing our nutrition. We have different religions and political parties. There is more than one right way to arrive at good sleep. So I always say good sleep matters. How you get there doesn't matter as long as you get there. Different babies are going to have different levels of need and different levels of tolerance. So there can be a lot of voices in the cry it out versus co-sleeping space, and everybody kind of pointing fingers saying, you're bad, you're wrong if you do it this way. And at the Peaceful Sleeper, I think with my therapeutic background, I'm really invested in finding the right path for your child. So we have 4 different levels of how we achieve independence. The more accelerated level isn't cry it out the way that it was done in the past of these like really long stretches of crying and just like throwing up our hands.
Which,
But
by
it
the way, is
is-
torture. It feels like torture for a parent when your little baby is just screaming.
It feels like torture, and it just doesn't have to be that intense. But in more accelerated approaches, some babies do need a little bit longer to figure things out. Versus, some babies want to arrive at great sleep without allowing any room for protest. And maybe they are fine with optimal sleep taking a lot of parental intervention and about 6 to 12 months for it to unfold. Where we find about 80 to 85% of families fall is in what we call a modified accelerated approach. That's giving 10-minute intervals where we're giving babies space and time to work on some skill development. But it's a very attuned process where we're paying attention to some key metrics to understand, is this a level of protest? Is this a level of independence that they are capable of mastering?
I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Where were you 12 years ago in my life, Chrissy? My goodness. I love that, the thought of maybe the 10-minute intervals to just kind of wait and see, okay, you kind of have that end time limit that I think mentally we need as parents to be like, okay, if we reach this point, this is where we can step in and try to reassess.
Yeah, and anything that we do in parenting can and should involve a little bit of, when do I hang back? When do I come to help you or rescue you? In tummy time, there's some protest in rolling and crawling and walking. I think about my kids with their math homework. There's a little bit of like, I don't understand. And I don't necessarily just jump in right away to go solve the problem for you.
Yes.
I hang back to see, how much help do you need? Can I help you in a minimal way so that you're still achieving the thing on your own? That's parenting for life.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That is so, so true. You talk about optimizing sleep as an act of love, and I feel that so deeply. Why is sleep so essential for babies, but also for their parents?
Yeah, so I love Matthew Walker. He wrote the book, Why We Sleep, and he has this great quote in there that I'm, of course, going to butcher, but he said something about how there are literally thousands of medical research studies that have examined and analyzed sleep in some way, shape, or form, and not a single one has ever concluded that sleep is not important. Quality sleep impacts literally every single function in our brain and body and our relationships. So with our babies, there are 4 primary aspects. Good sleep positively impacts their physical development, their emotion regulation, their social development, and their cognitive development. Good sleep also deeply impacts parental mental health and the parent relationship. It impacts mom and dad's physical health, their emotion regulation. Good sleep prevents illness and sickness, and in fact, helps you drive better. So you can be a safer driver for your children if you have gotten quality sleep.
100%. There's no doubt about it. And, there's so many times that I'll say to my friends the importance of making sure that your children can get their naps, because those naps are for us too. Like, they're so important for us to have. I know when my son dropped his first nap, I was devastated. I'm a morning news anchor, so I live and die by naps. So when he dropped his first nap, I cried because I almost felt like it was more for me than him. What do you say to parents when their child does drop that first nap? Is there anything that they can do to try to make sure that the sleep still counts or that sleep works for them, even though that nap is gone?
Yeah, our kids are going to drop naps at different ages and stages. Luckily, in their early life, when they start to drop naps, usually that sleep is just consolidating. It's not that they need less sleep, they're just getting it in longer stretches. Maybe their total sleep time is decreasing by 30 minutes at a time, as they go. I think it's really important to still provide and allow for some quiet time. It's actually really important for our kids' imaginations and their development to have quiet play, to color, to play with stuffed animals. So if you're a parent that really, really needs a nap, you can still incorporate quiet time into your day. Even if your baby doesn't actually sleep during that time, they can still rest and recharge.
How important is a routine, a bedtime routine, or even a nap routine?
Very important. And if they have skills, you don't need as much of a routine. So we do want to have some similarities so that we can kind of tell their brain, hey, nap time usually happens at exactly this time. Here's what we typically do before the nap so that it sets the stage. Some kind of behavioral cues like, we change your diaper, we put on the sleep sack, we start a lullaby, we read a story, we turn off the lights. Those little anchors can provide a really helpful routine. And I have 4 kids. So I always say, like, honestly, my nap routine for my 4th child was about 27 seconds. So, so routine and structure and consistency is important, but also so is just the acquisition of independent sleep skills. Again, I kind of compare it to swimming. Like if I know how to swim in my own pool, I know how to swim at the community pool, at the gym pool, and eventually at the lake and at the beach. Swimming is swimming. You can do it in different environments, even if I'm wearing a different bathing suit.
Right. I think it's so great to be able to give parents the freedom, just how you said that, to understand you got to do what's right for you and figure out what's best for your family in your own way. I think that's huge. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a lot more about sleep for our children and the importance of it for ourselves as well with Chrissy Lawler. We will be right back. And we are back on Parenting Unscripted, where we are wrapping up our conversation about sleep and the importance of sleep for our children and our families as a whole. Chrissy Lawler is the author of the book, The Peaceful Sleeper, and it's such a great company as well. I've been following you on Instagram and seeing everything you post there, and all of your tips and tricks are just a dream come true for a lot of families. So thank you for everything you're doing for all of us.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. I wanted to ask you about teething and how parents can handle that when they feel like, just when you feel like you got it, teething comes into play.
Yeah. And doesn't that just happen with everything in life?
Yes.
Right? Like you get ready, you get out of the house early, and then you hit a traffic jam.
Yep.
And so I always like to remind parents to just have some flexibility, roll with the punches. Teething is going to impact every child differently. Some are totally unfazed and it doesn't really throw them off. Some are disturbed for a day or two when that tooth bud is right at the cusp of breaking through. Some kids are thrown off for 2 weeks. The important thing is tuning into your child, meeting their needs, striking that balance of what kind of comfort and support do you need? When do I hang back because you're uncomfortable, but you're kind of just, you don't even want me to come in? And then most importantly, when the disruption is over, we get back on track.
Get right back. And do you find that if you already have that routine, a few days or maybe even 2 weeks, if you've done the sleep training, that's not going to knock them completely off balance?
Exactly. I, again, think about every other routine that we have in life. If you're in a great fitness routine or you're training for a marathon and then you go on a cruise for a week, you didn't get out of shape. You got out of your routine. Yes. And yeah, your first run or two when you get home is going to feel a little clunky.
Yes.
But get back to it. If you had 2 days of a running routine and then you went on a cruise, yes, it's certainly going to be much harder to get back in the groove. But our brains crave routine and structure. So just bounce back.
What would you say about sleep regression? Is that similar or is there a different plan of attack there?
Very similar. We, first and foremost, don't catastrophize, roll with the punches, get back on track. Sleep regressions happen typically when there's some other developmental milestone that they are working on. So I think about, if I'm throwing a huge holiday party and I'm getting the house ready and I'm meal prepping, I might have gotten behind on laundry or on my emails.
Yes.
And because my brain is focused, my energy is focused on something else. But then as soon as we've achieved that thing, again, we just bounce back.
That makes perfect sense. You often say there's a no one size fits all method, but there is a framework. What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we establish a good sleep foundation. So that's optimizing daytime feedings, optimizing timing, learning soothing strategies so our babies are comfortable throughout the day and night, and eliminating discomfort. Then, once we have a good solid sleep foundation, we give some space and time for them to figure things out on their own. So, typically, like I said, it's a 10-minute timer, but we're not just setting a timer for timer's sake. We are looking at how much variability is there. Is baby relatively chill and calm, or are they screaming bloody murder?
Yeah.
That gives us a different data point and a different plan of attack. We also are looking at how they are self-soothing on their own. Are they making progress? And then we look at how baby calms down when we go in. If baby has gotten so amped that they can't calm down, even when you are picking them up and giving them a pacifier and rocking and bouncing, that's a baby that got too escalated. If, however, you have a baby that just stops crying immediately and smiles at you, that's a baby that was more annoyed than actually distressed. So the easier babies that are showing signs of progress, we can give them time and space. The babies that are so amped and aren't making progress, we shorten the amount of time that we're giving them to work things out. We're tailoring it to them.
I know that a lot of times new parents are really surprised by how much their own mental health is connected to their baby's well-being. What can you explain to them about that particular connection?
Yes. I mean, in many ways, it's a deeply ingrained adaptive strategy. We, of course, are deeply invested in our children's well-being. And there's no such thing as a perfect parent.
Yeah.
And the research actually shows that our quest to be the perfect parent often results in what we call overparenting behaviors and trying to avoid every hard thing for our children. And that actually is not optimal for their development. It is good for kids to have what we call good enough parenting and to be routinely disappointed by their parents in manageable ways. It is better for your kids if you are not perfect. We just need to make sure that the struggle is manageable for them. And so I actually take a lot of solace in that. And, I am a therapist, so I'm biased, but I'm just, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try my hardest. I know that I'm not going to be perfect. And I've already decided I am going to pay for my kids' therapy for the rest of their life. So
have at it, kids.
I'm try my hardest, and I'm also going to help compensate for wherever I've dropped the ball because I love you so much.
Absolutely. We have about 20 seconds, Chrissy, but for the exhausted parent listening right now, what is one thing that you can say to them that they maybe could implement tonight to give them some hope?
Honestly, the message that I have for an exhausted parent is if you are loving your baby and you are trying your best, you are enough.
Oh, that is perfection. There's nothing else you can possibly add to that. Chrissy Lawler, author of The Peaceful Sleeper. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as well. I'm sure it was very helpful, especially to some of those newer parents who are just trying to figure it all out. And remember, you can watch new episodes of Parenting Unscripted every Tuesday morning right here on Wavy Plus at 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I hope you have a wonderful day. Be good.